Hi, it's Laura, and we're ready to make some new stuff. We just finished a project, so I have an idea for something. One's a little bit more complex and a little bit more lengthy. I don't know how else to put that. This is one that we will continue to work on probably for a good part of the rest of this year. And there will be other smaller projects that intermingle in amongst it. So it's not going to be a continuous months long project. But what I want to do with this one, it's a book that I'm calling not Manipulate, I changed the name. Metamorphosis, a Beyond Fabric Fodder Book. And with this, I'm going to be using some of the fabric fodder. If those of you who haven't are aware of what fabric fodder is, I did a series last year that it's not complete yet. It's going to be an ongoing project again. But fabric fodder is creating from fabric, turning it into something else that you can use in your books or quilts or whatever you want to do. It's painting and all that kind of stuff onto fabric. I have a whole list of all of those. So you can go check that out on my channel here. But what we're going to do with this one is we are going to take neutral colored fabrics, papers, that sort of thing, and we are going to change them. And I'm staying with about 75% neutral, 80% neutral, maybe 5% black and white stripes, and 20% in the blacks, charcoal kind of tones. But I want to stay neutral because then we are going to add color through, let's see, what are some of the things I have my little list here. So we're going to be using color through acrylic paint, watercolor, ink, crayon, pencil, pen, sprays, gouache, pastels, and thread. I'm going to allow myself to use colored thread. I'm not going to force myself to dye my own thread. Also with not just thread, but yarn and other fibers and things. So we're going to add those to transform and change things. Like I have all sorts of neutral color fabrics in all sorts of different types of fabrics. So I have, like, this is a silk velvet, and this is a silk, I totally end up losing my brain as to, it's, a see-through fabric. They all have specific names, and of course, as soon as I do something like this, I completely lose my train of thought on that. I have a variety of different canvases, some washed, some not. This is a wool crepe. I know it's wool because it's gotten eaten a little bit. I've had this. This was what my wedding dress was made out of. Then I've got some cottons, just, this is like cotton quilting fabric, and some linen, and this is a silk. This is another canvas and a canvas. I've got some, these are also a cotton gauze in kind of an ecru and a white. I also have cheesecloth. Cheesecloth is really fun to add color to. Some other kinds of, this is a polyester, kind of a lace type stuff. And then some vintage laces in, a more vintage color, and some ecru. So, stay with light neutrals. I have some stripes. Here's a wide black and white stripe, and skinny black and white stripe, a black and gray stripe, and a cream and ecru stripe. So those, I'll allow myself those stripes. And then I have some charcoal-ish, blackish, texture-y, and this one's got a little bit of a pattern. That's about as much pattern as I'll go with. So some blacks, and I have a kind of cotton weight type, quilting weight cotton fabric. So with these fabrics, we'll transform them using the fabric fodder techniques. excuse me, I do want to make this into some sort of a book. That's about as far as I've gotten in terms of concrete of what it's going to be. I have thoughts of doing something much like my 3D projects of the past. If you're not familiar with those, you can watch some old videos. Is I always had some sort of a container that held a book, and sometimes those containers, were houses or fairy houses or bird houses or trunks and suitcases and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's what I did for about 10 years. It was those 3D projects. And I have some ideas of doing that, but I can't say for sure. Because what this project, let me go through a little bit more of this stuff, is also wanting to not just do metamorphosis with fabric, but we can do stuff with some papers. So I've, a newsprint here. I've got some, also bringing some black in. So I've got some black watercolor paper. This is a printmaking paper, so it takes a little bit more abuse. I've got envelopes in white, paper bags, and then some tissue papers. Vintage-wise, I've got some player piano paper. And I've got an old Japanese ledger that's from like the 1800s sometime. I love this thing. I've got, this is some Tyvek, where you can actually buy Tyvek. You don't have to steal it from the post office. So I'm bothered by that. So, excuse me, some canvas pieces. These are gessoed canvas. Actually, I cut these off of some canvases. Some file folders. And then this is just representative of just doing some book papers. And then maybe some handmade papers. And these are some old vintage papers that are have a natural patina on them. And then maybe some rice paper. This is the bakery paper stuff that a lot of people use for doing gel printing. This is one of my absolute very favorite mixed media papers ever. Love, 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 love this stuff. This is Reeves BFK, Rives BFK. And this stuff is awesome. What I love about it is you can do all sorts of wet media on top of it. It doesn't warp and buckle that much. It is a printmaking paper. You're going to have to get it at a, you'd have to get it at an art supply store, but or online. Awesome. I've got some Arches watercolor paper. I've got 5 million other kinds of watercolor paper as well. But keeping everything in that neutral. I'm not going to, go so far as to say it has to be white because I'm pulling in, but more of some neutral, natural type of tones and colors and that. And it's, it's my party. I can set my own rules. So, subject to change if I choose to, kind of thing. But just playing with different things, but keeping it in that neutral range so that we're adding colors and such. And my thinking in terms of the book part of this, I'm not sure if I want to turn the cover into doing something or if I want to actually make a container. And we'll figure that as we go along, because what this is really about is taking papers, and probably a lot of it being fabric, and transforming it, and then rather than just having a pile like I was doing with my fabric fodder series, is taking those fabrics that we made, and then we get a big, huge stack of them, or making ephemera, or making background, or gel prints, or whatever. Yes, it's nice to have the stack of them, but you got to use them. So that's kind of what I want to do with this, is kind of transform it. It's how I put it in the description that I'm putting on my Instagram, is that it's kind of showing a bit of how the sausage is made. So many times when I'm presenting a project or a book or something like that, it's all worked out. I have all the dimensions worked out. I have how I'm binding it, how I'm doing this, that, and the other. It's all worked out. And you're seeing the finished product and not the oodles and gobs of hours in advance of that, of how we got to the point where then we're doing whatever we're doing it on camera. So I'm kind of going through the whole process with you. I'm going to get a brand new notebook that I keep my notes in. I never share those. So the fact that I'm even considering sharing that stuff, that's a big deal. So kind of going through how the whole process and my thoughts along the way of why I decide what I decide and why I pick what I pick. And along the way, we'll learn some other things like, how mixing colors and mixing different kinds of media and what happens in stitching, and there'll be machine stitching and hand stitching and all that kind of stuff. A friend of mine who I run all this stuff by before I ever make any final decisions, she asked, well, is there going to be some sort of like supply list? And no, because I don't know what we're doing yet. This is kind of going to be a bit of an exploration along the way as to what kinds of things that we're going to turn this into. So it's going to be fun. At least I'm going to try. And we'll let it go from there. So we have lots of neutral paper, lots of neutral fabric, and we're just going to start making stuff and then turning it into something else, I guess. So we'll see how it all goes. So hope you'll join me on this journey while we are making a book that I'm calling Metamorphosis, a Beyond Fabric Fodder Book. So we'll see how this goes. Thanks a bunch.